Weird planets, Starship gets a Raptor 3 engine, lasers have been fired on the moon, and we discuss how cool rocket payloads are and why we should get excited. All coming up on the next Orbital Edge. Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Orbital Edge News, a brand new show for passionate spaceflight fans. I am your host Chad, and you know the drill. Let's get into those recent launches. Kicking off the list of launches is the China Long March 6A rocket. Let's get this footage rolling here. I love how these China launches have definitely improved in quality recently. This rocket sports two YF-100 engines as opposed to its Long March 6 variant, which used only one and is also the first China rocket to use solid boosters. This launch happened on August 6, 6:42 Universal Coordinated Time and is carrying the G60 Polar Group series of Ku, U, and V band high-speed internet satellites. This constellation is set for 36 orbital planes and should total about 12,000 satellites. Ouch! It's a lot of satellites. We've kind of learned nothing over Starlink, have we? Next up is the CRS-2 NG-21 Cygnus mission from a Falcon 9.
4, 3, 2, 1, ignition, engines full power, and liftoff of Falcon 9. Go space.
Those plumes of smoke are always awesome to see. This launch occurred at 3:02 Universal Coordinated Time at the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station on August 4th. This vehicle will carry the long-awaited Cygnus NG-21 mission to the International Space Station. All right, and last on the list is a Rocket Labs launch. This mission is called Owl for One, and we're going to roll the footage here. This rocket is the Electron rocket, and it lifted off majestically off the New Zealand LC-1B pad at the Mahia Peninsula. This launch occurred at 12:39 Universal Coordinated Time and is carrying the Synthetic Aperture Radar, or SAR, to orbit. This satellite will be an Earth-observing satellite that can measure millimeter-level changes to the Earth's surface. This really is cool because our current surface-observing satellites can only photograph down to the meter level. That's going to close up the launches for the week. Now for some space news. NASA has recently conducted its first laser experiment using 2 lunar spacecraft. Now this is not to be confused with the past laser experiments, which were all originated from Earth. What makes this laser firing cool was the fact that the laser was fired from a lunar orbiter directly at the SLIM lander that Japan had landed several months ago. We talked about this lander in an earlier episode and mentioned the fact that its landing was not fully successful, and this plays a role in how difficult it is to fire this laser to the lander and get it to reflect back, considering the awkward angle it had to contend with. To make this happen, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter fires a laser beam directly to what is called the retroreflector, or just a fancy name for a mirror. NASA's retroreflector has 8 quartz corner cube prisms set inside a dome-shaped frame that is 2 inches wide. With no power maintenance required, the retroreflectors can last on the moon's surface for decades and thus provide reliable beacons for future missions. So because the lander was face down, the first 8 attempts failed, but then on May 24th, the SLIM reflectors have been successfully pinged. Talk about hide and go seek. Last in space news, but a first on Orbital Edge, is astronomy. Well, let's dive into that with the James Webb Telescope doing James Webb things. It has recently made a groundbreaking planetary discovery with an exoplanet. If forever sunsets are your thing, this planet is for you. It's called WASP 39b, and it features a tidally locked configuration to its parent star. And what this means is that the planet does, it spins centrally on its axis, but rather one side of the planet always faces the sun. This allows one side of the planet to experience total darkness infinitely. Imagine a planet like this and the cultural differences between like the day side and the night side. I would actually even love to see a movie about this too. And we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, the topic of the show. Why should we care about the rocket payload even after the launch? Stay tuned. Don't go away. Welcome back. Before we begin, are you guys okay with a bit of astronomy and planetary news in our show? Let us know down below in the comments. We think this could add more value to the show because rocket fans can also be planet fans too. Okay, now that we have got that out of the way, how do you all feel about things we launch to space? Do we care about the spacecraft or satellite that has a funny name? Do you watch launches regularly, then stop watching as soon as it clears the skies? These questions are super great to ask because in order to get humanity excited about space, we are going to have to find a way to explain what these payloads are, basically in a more natural and a decoded way so that it resonates with the general audience. We asked the space community this question, and so before I actually begin with what the space community had to say, I want to start with a personal story on watching a launch, because I live it at the Cape. I see these things all the time. But what I've seen is kind of disturbing. I'm probably the first person on camera to actually tell something like this that I don't like about what I have been seeing among people who else comes to watch the launches. And as I'm standing next to these people, the person to the left of me and the person to the right of me, they don't even have their phone out, tuning into the live stream, for the countdown. So already they don't know what's in the rocket payload fairing. They don't know what the engines are on the rocket. They don't know. There's just a lot of things that they don't know. I don't blame these people. Now, when the launch finally does happen, I see a lot of people who just scurry away. They just go home. They go about their business. They don't hear. They don't look up the mission progress or anything like that. And it bugs me to a certain degree. But however, I do have to understand that there are levels of spaceflight enthusiast. I'm going to make a show about this in the future that describe the different levels of people who watch a launch. But it ranges. You've got your big time enthusiasts who know everything about the rocket, and then you got your people that go just to go generally see a launch. It's like they're seeing a football game. It's kind of passive. How do we get these people more excited about space? So on Reddit, someone by the name of Reddit Runner, so he basically says this: send it exciting stuff up. A sports car on the street is exciting, but only as long as you see it. When it turns the corner, it's out of your mind. The Okay. And now I'm quoting him word for word here, so I'm trying my best here. The nth Starlink satellite or weather satellite are only interesting because of the package. After SECO, which stands for second engine cutoff, the excitement is gone. Crewed vehicles are still exciting after SECO, but it seems to be unbelievably difficult for anyone but SpaceX to create an even watchable stream, let alone an exciting one. In general, to keep the audience attached, you need to reduce the word count and push up the actual info content. Keep at least the people engaged who are interested anyway. You will not get others by baby talk to them. So my answer to this is, yeah, in the live stream, a lot of the talk in there it's too technical for the general audience. And we would like to see more enthusiasm and excitement with the application of the mission. And of course, this is important. It's true that the 1 millionth Starlink launch by SpaceX is now pretty much an objectively boring payload. SpaceX, I think, no longer does Starlink coverage, and now that job belongs to Spaceflight now and NASA Spaceflight. I love the work that they are doing, and they are providing this launch coverage for you guys for free, and this does mean that SpaceX will need to ramp up their emotion and excitement for any non-Starlink payloads, such as, for example, the transporter missions. I'd like to see a little bit more transparency and detail in those, as that's a big rideshare mission. And these transporter missions are really cool because, let's say you're a university student or you're a high school, and you're doing these projects where you can send up a little thing to space, because SpaceX can do this for cheap now with this rideshare mission. But here's the key, though. What they're doing can be connected with a general audience, and it will help open up that discussion of opening humanity to space and more access to space as well. And if you get more people excited about that, those people will then say, hey, wait, I have a chance to actually contribute to space, because not only the cost is lower because of what Falcon 9 is doing with their reusability, making spaceflight cheaper, but also it gets people to kind of connect their hobbies that they do and translate that into something useful in space. So that's just my 2 cents on that. Here's something that United Launch Alliance or SpaceX should do, in my opinion, is they should connect with like a high school classroom or university classroom and have these people ask questions about the payload. And additionally, what I've seen Arianespace do is they've actually shown the payload inside the fairing during the live stream for sort of like a cross-section cutaway. And it showed the actual the payload inside of it, so you can kind of get a context of what they're launching, how big it is, what is it shaped like, and it's those visuals that can captivate people versus just data on a screen. And lastly, I think we need to stop being cookie cutter on certain launch coverages, such as the crew missions from SpaceX. That, to me, it starts getting too repetitive, too predictable. I think that they should change up the program a little bit to help connect with a more, well, not only a broad audience, but understand that a broad audience has different interests. So think of it as you're casting channels to each niche to help get those people interested as well in a crew launch. So doing something like that will definitely add more of a human touch to each and every mission, thus making each crew mission stand out from the rest. Well, I think we beat this dead horse. So what do you guys think on the internet? Let me know down below if you've got any ideas of how to get people more excited about what's in the payload fairing of a rocket. Don't hesitate to put anything in there. great answers. Definitely will get featured on the show. We like to feature cognitive, serious answers. We're going to take another break, and when we come back, comments from the last show. Welcome back. We'd like to thank all the collaborators and subscribers that have helped make the show engaging. With that said, let's move to the first comment, which is actually a user-submitted video. We'd like to show things like this to help get you guys more excited about space and to kind of put a different POV on what's been going on up on the ISS. This is from Ricardo Ross, ISAA, over at Astronautica Cast, and it shows the super high detailed footage of the places on Earth. As you can see here, shows where the city is located on the Earth here, and it just gives you that awesome point of reference. I just love the research that went into this by Ricardo. And we can't express enough how much we thank him for letting us use this footage. This is just absolute incredible. It's super high detailed footage, and it's you can see it in 4K. You can actually head over to Astronautica Cast YouTube channel where you can actually watch the video. So this next comment comes from Lexusy2008 from Reddit. So wait a minute, there are high costs associated with backed up payloads waiting to get launched after a serious incident, but in SpaceX defense, they were flying again just after 2 weeks. So isn't this just a non-issue? Now this comment is referring to the FAA grounding of the Falcon 9 that had happened last month. Its second stage had a bad event causing a total mission failure. SpaceX, now, they were lucky on this because the FAA wasn't even done with their full investigation, and they were flying basically two and a half weeks later. They got permission to fly anyways, despite what happened to the second stage, which I do find pretty interesting. Now, if there was a more serious issue, you can bet they would have been grounded for probably up to 6 months. And those costs for a lot of the payloads would have added up to a lot of money. And I'm talking about any of the government payloads versus, I know SpaceX has a lot of internal payloads, but I think the costing there is a bit more efficient because, obvious reasons. When you internally do things, you keep track of your own inventory. You have your own proprietary systems to take care of that. And I would have to say that, SpaceX, with its internal assets, wouldn't have bothered them that much, with the exception of a few payloads like the Cygnus spacecraft. So those of you out on the internet, what is your take on that? Do you think that in a grounding like that will always be like a short return to flight after about 2 or 3 weeks, or could you see something up to 6 months or even a year? You never know. If there's a fundamental issue that they find on the Falcon 9 rocket, and what I mean by fundamental is maybe a piece that's manufactured the wrong way, but then it's being cookie cuttered, but you're copying the bad piece over and over and over again, and those bad pieces are now being incorporated into any future new booster from SpaceX. Well, what do you think is going to happen there? That's a big problem, because Now they know that that defective piece is on every rocket since whatever date that they had started using that so-called widget. We have reached escape velocity, which means that completes the show. Before we go, the answer to the orbital trivia is the Mir space station, and this is the space station that the Russians launched back in 1985-86, somewhere around the mid-80s. If you enjoyed this episode, you can support us in the future by participating on the discussions on social media and also on the show. And with that said, we will see you next time.